Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, lots of reports and rumors swirling about Raiders who could be on the move, a Raider we know is on the move, and potential incoming Raiders. Lots to unpack on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, Wednesday, January 25th, 2023.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen each and every day. Remember, you can find the Locked On Raider podcast free and available on all platforms. That includes YouTube. Thanks to my man Ari, does a great job each and every day making sure we're looking good, sounding good, and we're up on YouTube each and every day. We do appreciate anyone who checks it out for a minute or 31 minutes, whatever the case may be, just for giving us a look. We definitely appreciate you. And if you do check it out and you like it, feel free to subscribe to it, man. It's growing pretty fast in a very short amount of time, so we definitely appreciate that. And today's edition of the Locked On Raider podcast is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. If you ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your own football franchise, basically being Dave Ziegler, then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the App Store. All listeners of the Locked On Raiders podcast get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On. It's all caps. It's in the game store. Tell you a lot more about them later on in the show. But, man, we got a lot to get to on today's show. A lot to talk about some incoming Raiders potentially, some outgoing Raiders potentially. But let's go ahead and talk about some current Raiders right now. And that starts with rookie Dylan Parham. He was the former third-round pick out of Memphis, Dave Ziegler's very first pick that he had as the GM of the Silver and Black, and the Pro Football Writers of America actually voted him to the all-rookie team. Now, if you remember on Tuesday's show, if you check that out, I talked about the all-NFL team, the all-AFC team, and talked about the Raiders that made that. Well, they released the all-rookie team on Tuesday, and it was really cool to see that rookie Dylan Parham had made the list. The Raiders tweeted out, "Congratulations to Dylan Parham on being selected to the Pro Football Writers of America all-rookie team. He is the 34th player in Raiders history since 1974, selected to the all-rookie team, the third guard, to earn the honor, joining Steve Wisniewski in 89 and Kurt Marsh in 81. So, again, big ups to Dylan Parham for going in as a third-round pick. Big ups to Dave Ziegler for finding him in the third round. I mean, there's a lot of times where you get a pick in the third round, it might not be all that it's cracked up to be. It might not end up being who you think he's going to be, but he did find a good one in Dylan Parham, a guy that could play every single position on the interior of that offensive line. And, the thing about him, obviously Dave Ziegler didn't have the first or second round picks because of the Devontae Adams trade, which I had no problem with that, but he's looking for guys that are versatile, and Dylan Parham is very versatile. He can play that left guard position, he can play that right guard position, he can play the center position, and a lot of people believe that center is actually his best position, except for we all know that Andre James is holding that spot down right now. Now, who knows how long he's going to be holding that down for, but at some point you may see Dylan Parham, transition into that center spot. And I'll also say this about Dave Ziegler. I'm talking about Dylan Parham right now, but don't forget about the 7th-round pick out of Ohio State, Thayer Munford. He was a guy that dropped all the way to the 7th round, and the Raiders might have found a little diamond in the rough there. When he was called upon in 2022, his rookie year, he actually did a really good job. Now, I know he wasn't in the mix as much as Dylan Parham was, but he came in, he played that blocking tight end role, even though he's a tackle, and he really excelled at that. And I do expect to see more of Thayer Munford moving forward, even if it's just, being some quality depth along that offensive line as a tackle that's in the game all the time. Maybe he ends up transitioning to the right tackle position for all we know. But I just know for a guy that came in sparingly throughout the course of the year, I thought he did really well. Matter of fact, I think that the draft for the Raiders in Dave Ziegler in his first draft was pretty decent. Again, it wasn't the full sample size with no first or second round pick, but they did what they could with what they had. Dylan Parham in the 3rd round. Zamir White, of course, he didn't get very much burn in his rookie year because Josh Jacobs just never came off the field. And when you lead the league in rushing, that kind of happens. But I think Zamir White is a hell of a running back. Got Neil Farrell and Matthew Butler, 2 defensive tackles in the 4th and the 5th round. It's obviously an area of need, so those guys got to continue to develop. You saw more Butler than you did Farrell Jr. his rookie year. And then I mentioned Thayer Munford, and then Britton Brown, the running back. They also got him in the 7th round. So not saying all those guys are going to pan out. They're going to be all world. But at the very end of the day, they could be some talented dudes that at the very least end up being some depth. But right now we're talking about Dylan Parham on the all-rookie team according to Pro Football Writers of America. So congratulations to him. Also, Josh Jacobs, who we know is going to be a free agent at the end of the league year. You know, when the league year turns over, he'll be a free agent. I do think the Raiders are going to do everything in their power to make sure he stays around, including using the franchise tag on him after not picking up his fifth-year option. But after seeing what he did his rookie year, I think it's a no-doubt or a no-brainer that he's definitely going to be around for the Raiders moving forward. But he did tweet out something that caught a lot of Raider Nation's attention on Tuesday, and he's tweeted out, "It's got to make sense for me," and then did a little shrugging emoji. And then another tweet, "It's more about life, but football too. So there you go. It's Josh Jacobs saying that, and a lot of people say, Q, what does that mean? Is that he talking about his contract? Yes, absolutely. 100% he's talking about his contract. It's got to make sense for me. That's what he said right after the season. They asked if he wanted to come back, and he said, yeah, but it's got to make sense, right? And that's true. All these guys, it's got to make sense. And I do think the Raiders are going to do everything in their power to make it make sense. I don't believe that we'll see Josh Jacobs in another jersey in 2023, but that's just my gut feeling. We'll see how it all shakes out. They could do anything that they want. They can sign him to a contract extension right now. And when he puts out a tweet like that, it almost feels like the conversations are going on. At some point, they can apply the franchise tag if they feel like they need to. But I don't think, again, just gut feeling, Josh Jacobs is going anywhere. Now, how about some of those reports that are out there right now? Of course, everyone's waiting for Derek Carr to see what the kind of shoe drops with him. Is it going to be a trade? Are they going to flat out release him by that February 15th date? Well, Jeremy Fowler from ESPN, he was a busy dude. On Tuesday, he was a real busy dude. He put out a report on Derek Carr saying that nearly a dozen teams could be looking for a quarterback this offseason, beginning with the AFC South and NFC South, where every team, except for Jacksonville, appears to be in transition at the game's most important position. He goes on to say about Derek Carr, Carr will be coveted due to the league-wide demand, a situation that gives leverage to the Raiders, who must navigate Carr's no-trade clause, but will want to maximize value before Carr's $40.4 million guaranteed is due February 15th. And this is where the report comes in, and this is just an AFC coach pointed this out. He said, one veteran AFC coach points to Houston, where GM Nick Caserio has ties to Raiders GM Dave Ziegler as a potential destination. Caserio and Ziegler have executed multiple trades in the past. Yes, Houston could take a quarterback with the number 2 pick in the draft, but it also has 11 picks, including 2 in the top 12. That's plenty of ammunition to execute a deal. And the coach said Nick will be looking for a high-character quarterback. That'll be important to him. Derek fits that mold, and he's got a natural tie to Houston. His brother David was the franchise first ever pick in the NFL draft, number 1 overall in 2002. And I'll say this, Houston has always made a lot of sense to me. Derek has mentioned that he thought he was going to be a Texan. He at one point wanted to be a Texan. So it makes a lot of sense as long as the Texans decide that that's what they want. I've asked John McClain before, and he thinks that they'll just go strictly with the young dude and throw him into the fire. But maybe they go and draft a young dude at number 2 like a Bryce Young. Let's just go ahead and throw that out there. And then they bring in Derek Carr and let him sit behind Derek for a year, maybe even 2. And learn the ropes, learn the NFL game, and have a guy that's a quality player that doesn't have the pressures of, well, you have to win right now because Houston's roster is not built to win right now. So that could be a scenario. So that's just one of the reports that came out on Tuesday around the silver and black. Also, this is still Jeremy Fowler. Teams around the league expect the Raiders to aggressively tweak their roster, and that includes Josh McDaniels and GM Dave Ziegler getting their own guys in air quotes while moving on from team veterans. NFL teams will keep an eye on tight end Darren Waller and wide receiver Hunter Renfrow. Again, that's according to Jeremy Fowler from ESPN. And so to me, what that tells me is I'm trying to translate it. I'm trying to put my GM hat on. I'm trying to put my insider hat on, and I'm not either one of those guys. I'm not a GM or an insider. To me, it lets me know that those guys are available. I'm not saying that they're going to get traded at all. I'm just saying that they're available if a team is interested. The Raiders are basically saying, hey, give us a call. Let's see what we can do. I don't know if they're 100% happy with Hunter Renfrow after that contract extension. I know they didn't get much out of him. Hell, they didn't get much out of Darren Waller either, but I think you see the potential and the talent around Darren Waller, what he could bring to the mix. But he's also been a guy that's missed a lot of time because of injury, and Hunter Renfrow doesn't really run the routes the way that Josh McDaniels expects him to, where they're real precise. He likes to freelance a little bit, so maybe that's something that the head coach is not feeling. So maybe 1 or 2 of those guys could be on the trade block. So that's something to pay attention to. But it doesn't stop there, Raider Nation. Oh, no, there's more. Also, from Jeremy Fowler from ESPN, the Raiders believe Tom Brady would consider signing with them if he returns for the 2023 season. The the Raiders are one of about 3 teams Brady would consider, according to Jeremy Fowler. The Bucs are also not completely out of it. So there you go. You hear about Derek Carr, you hear about Darren Waller, you hear about Hunter Renfrow, and also potentially Tom Brady. All those reports were out there as of Tuesday. So if you thought the offseason was going to be boring, joke's on you. Don't even sleep for a minute, because there's going to be more reports, there's going to be more rumors, there's going to be more speculation flying around the silver and black until it's not. Until they have a quarterback in place, until this roster is starting to put together, they go through free agency, and they get to the draft. There's going to be so many different reports around this team. It's one of the most fascinating teams to talk about in the league. Even when they're not good, you hear people talking about them all the time. It might not necessarily be great conversation, but there's always some kind of conversation swirling around the silver and black. And hell, a lot of times agents like to put the Raiders name in it anyway, because it makes the story that much better. I've said that for years. So there is that. But there's one quarterback I did not talk about, and there's a situation that I feel like is brewing that really could point to all fingers at the silver and black. Again, it's just me scatter shooting, but we'll talk about that quarterback that I have not mentioned. We'll talk about him in segment number 2, why I'm talking about him, and what my gut feeling is around that said quarterback. We'll do that in segment number 2 after I tell you about the Ultimate Football GM. And you've heard me talk about this game many times. I'm so excited about it because basically it's what we're doing right now, talking about how to build a roster, who to build a roster with, who the quarterback should do. Basically, this exact game is exactly what we talk about all the time. Again, Ultimate Football GM. It's a game that you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by doing everything. All this is a challenging and realistic game. It's called the Ultimate Football GM. It's completely free and playable offline. You play on the go as you want and when you want to. And they've created a Locked On League for you to compete against Locked On fans all over the world. Can you be the ultimate Locked On Football GM? Choose the Locked On League in the app to join, and you can create a football dynasty. Locked On Raider podcast listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On. Remember, that's all in caps. It's in the game store. It's Locked On, all in caps. Make sure you check it out today. You want to download the game? It's easy. Visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the App Store. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Really want to deep dive into, a quarterback that I did not talk about in segment number 1. Left him out on purpose because I really feel like a lot of fingers are pointing to the Raiders, and really a lot of fingers are pointing in the direction of this said quarterback, and that's Aaron Rodgers. And I know a lot of folks aren't happy about that. Hell, a lot of folks aren't happy about the Tom Brady conversations. I get it. A lot of folks don't want either one of the guys, but I just kind of feel like it's a setting up, and I could be completely wrong. And if I am, no problem. But it just feels like, again, my gut feeling that this is setting up for an opportunity for the Raiders to go out and bring in Aaron Rodgers. And look, this is my thing. They have to find a way to win games this upcoming year. In 2023, there can't be a 6-11 team, a 7-10 team, even an 8-9 team. If that's the case, I don't think that there's a year 3 for Dave Ziegler. I don't think there's a year 3 for Josh McDaniels. I really don't. I believe they've got to find a way to win. They've got to find a way to put Raider fans in Allegiant Stadium as well. It cannot look like the last 2 games of the regular season against the Niners and the Chiefs. That's something that Mark Davis is not going to go for. And I know Las Vegas is a destination location. I know there's a lot of fans that from opposing teams that want to go out there, but they've got to find a way to put a winner in Allegiant Stadium. If not, I've said it for a long time, it'll just be another Las Vegas residency without anyone even there, right? And there's plenty of them throughout the city of Las Vegas. You don't want to have a $2 billion facility, a beautiful stadium on the Strip with nobody in it that's representing Raider Nation. I mean, they just don't want to do that, so they've got to have some kind of star power. That's exactly why I don't think the A's will work in Las Vegas if they ever decide to bring their raggedy behinds to Las Vegas, and I'm an A's fan, so there's that. But let's go ahead and jump back into the Aaron Rodgers conversation. Adam Schefter, of course, he's from ESPN, put out a couple updates. They said the Packers will not be trading Aaron Rodgers within the NFC conference. They will explore the idea of trading the quarterback exclusively to the AFC. Again, that's per Adam Schefter. And when you think about teams in the AFC that need quarterbacks, who do you think of? The Jets, the Dolphins, and the Raiders. That's just it for me. But if you want to hear what Shefty had to say, this was him on ESPN SportsCenter talking about what the Packers could do with Aaron Rodgers moving forward.
There was a real possibility that Rodgers will be traded this offseason. What more are you hearing?
Well, you're saying it could be the biggest storyline of the offseason.
Not mentioning the fact that we also have Tom Brady's future. We have Lamar Jackson's contract situation. Derek Carr is going to get traded. There's going to be a lot of quarterback news. But yes, Kevin, the big one could involve Aaron Rodgers. And look, it's hard to imagine that he's going to retire and walk away and surrender $110 million in guaranteed money. So that means he's either back with Green Bay or the team explores the idea of trading him. Now, Jordan Love is getting closer and closer to playing, and Aaron Rodgers is due $110 million the next 2 years for a team that is not well positioned against the cap. The easiest way to resolve some of that would be with the quarterback. You'd free up about $60 million in guaranteed money. You get back draft pick compensation. You'd have the ability to land other players. Again, not ideal, but keep this in mind too. We saw Brett Favre traded when he was 38, turned 39 that season. Aaron Rodgers is 39. It doesn't go on for everybody. And yes, one of these scenarios that the Green Bay Packers are expected to explore this offseason is the idea that they could have to part ways with Aaron Rodgers in the form of a trade. Doesn't mean it will happen, but if he wants that and they're on the same page, then that's certainly realistic, and there's the possibility that could unfold this offseason.
Which feels so crazy considering they just signed him last year to a 3-year deal, right?
All he needs to do is be coached.
Yeah, Herm said the conference thing, and I think that's important because I don't think there's any way the Packers will trade him in the NFC, and if they do go ahead and trade him, it would be to the AFC. So start having all the fun you want with all the teams in the AFC that need quarterbacks.
So there was Shefty talking about Aaron Rodgers, and you heard him at the end. He cut off L. Duncan and Kevin Nagandi and said, hey, you know, the AFC, not the NFC, the AFC. So again, Jets, Dolphins, Raiders. Now, let's double down on that. Aaron Rodgers, he's always a guest on the Pat McAfee show every Tuesday, right? And a lot of the hang-up, and even with the hang-up that I had with Aaron Rodgers, was the $60 million. Peter Bukowski talked about him. When I had Michael Giannitti from Spotrac.com on, he talked about that money. The money is a massive thing because it's $60 million he's owed in 2023. It's basically guaranteed. So Pat McAfee asked him, you know, how much that $60 million he's owed in 2023 will factor into his decision on returning to play the game of football in 2023.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. I don't think there'd be a scenario where I'd come back and that would be the number. I think it would definitely things would have to shift.
Got it. I mean, we'll see what we just did.
Oh, yeah.
Unpeeling the onion here.
For
Why do you think that?
Well, I just don't think it's, I think there's a lot of teams because of COVID that are strapped, and you're seeing us a lot of different contracts. They're pushing more money out in deals. They're creating, certain kind of void years to allow for an easier cap hit. So there would have to be some adjustments for sure.
So there's the answer from Aaron Rodgers. And you heard Pat McAfee talking about, see, we started to peel back the onion right there. And what that meant to me, it really feels like he's willing to restructure that for other teams, because he talked about how other teams are going through it and they're kind of cash strapped because of the pandemic. He didn't say the Packers are cash strapped. He said multiple teams. And I know Aaron Rodgers is smart. He's calculated. He knows why he said certain things. But what I took away from that was he's open to play for other teams. And he doesn't have a no trade clause. So the Packers could decide to trade him somewhere that he might not necessarily want to go. He can't pull like Derek Carr and say, no, I'm not going there. I'm not going there. If he does, he basically has to retire. So again, going back to where could he play? AFC, teams that need quarterbacks. The Jets, we all know, needs a quarterback. The Dolphins potentially could need a quarterback. Not too sure. And the Raiders are going to need a quarterback. And look, I know that a lot of folks aren't very high on Aaron Rodgers, but I would love to see that connection of Rodgers to the Adams. I would have no problem with that. I want to make sure that the Silver and Black keep Devontae Adams happy. I know that's not going to be for a 5, 6, 7 year run. That's probably for a 2-year run max, maybe 3 years if they're feeling a little froggy. But I'm okay with that. Devontae Adams is still, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in the league. You saw what he was able to do with Derek Carr, 100 catches, 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns. Could you imagine what he's doing with the guy that he played with the most of his career, and Aaron Rodgers? He can make that happen. Could you imagine? And again, remember what I said at the top about Allegiant Stadium. You got to have some star power in there. Could you imagine Rodgers to Adams in Allegiant Stadium while the Silver and Black, Raider Nation goes nuts? I can see it. I can absolutely see it. And again, being here with boots on the ground, it just puts everything in perspective. You've got to have that star power that fans are going to want to gravitate to and go see each and every Sunday, Thursday, Saturday, Monday, whatever the case may be. You're going to want to go out there. If you don't have that star power, fans will not go see you. There's way too much to do out here, and those tickets are very, very expensive. So PSL holders will just sell them as opposed to go out there and check out, a show if you don't have the star power. So I don't think that fans, as many people are as fired up about what Jarrett Stidham was able to do, I don't think fans would get fired up about saying Jarrett Stidham as a starting quarterback going into 2023. I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but you have to realize the star power does matter when it comes to this team, especially in the city of Las Vegas. So I just think the gut feeling is telling me everything is setting up for the Raiders to make a potential run at Aaron Rodgers. That doesn't mean it's going to get done, but that's what my gut feeling. People ask me all the time, who do you think the quarterback's going to be? Really, I have it narrowed down to Brady and Rodgers, which I know that's not going out on a limb, but I think with what Rodgers had to say on McAfee and the fact that the Packers are willing to trade him to an AFC team if that's what he wants, I just feel like it's all lining up for Aaron Rodgers to go to the Raiders, and I'm sure Devontae Adams is probably on the phone with him right now saying, hey, dude, you can come here. We can make some magic happen. Devontae wants to win a ring. Aaron would love to win a ring to go out on top, and man, Raider Nation would love to see them make the playoffs and make a deep run and potentially win a ring as well. There's still a lot of work to do. Offensive line still needs work. Defense needs a lot of work, but it'd be a hell of a start, I do believe, if the Raiders could make it work, and it sounds like Aaron Rodgers is willing to make it work. So that's all I got for you. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Before I get into that, though, I do want to tell you about our newest sports betting partner for Locked On, and that is FanDuel, the number one sports book in America. If you're new to FanDuel, it's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers, join today to get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has all your favorite bets from the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment your moment with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Here we go, Raider Nation, segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. I'm starting to mix up phone numbers. I'm starting to think of Raider Nation Radio 920. I'm starting to think of the Locked On Raider podcast. I'm starting to blend them all. Want to make sure I give you the right number. 707-654-4693. That's the Locked On Raider podcast number. Text and calls are all good. Matter of fact, we'll start off with a text today from Dave in Phoenix. It says, hey, Q, it's Dave in Phoenix. Tell me your thoughts on this idea. After seeing what he did against San Fran, I think that Stidham has real potential to be serviceable as a starter behind a solid offensive line. So what if they were to focus on re-signing Jacobs and use our draft capital and free agency to fix the offensive line and defense? Just curious to see what your thoughts would be on that idea. That's Dave in Phoenix. Thanks for the text, my man. I appreciate you, and I like what Stidham did, but I feel like it was a very small sample size, 2 games. I think that Jarrett Stidham is a really good backup. I think if you give him $5 million a year, give him a 3-year deal, maybe $15 million total, right? $5 million a year, I think he'd be super happy with that, right? Because he knows Josh McDaniels' system. You know if something were to happen, he can go in a pinch just like he did the final 2 games of the season. I just don't think he's the full-time starter. I don't think he's the guy that's going to get Raider Nation fired up if he were to be the opening day starter in 2023. That's just my gut feeling. But I do like the offensive line idea. I do like the re-signing Jacobs idea. And I definitely like the defense, getting the defense where it needs to be because, man, that defense is on the struggle bus, and it's been on the struggle bus for a very long time. Thank you, Dave, for that text. I appreciate you. Next up, got a call from Surf City Raider. That's Santa Cruz, Cali. Shout out to Santa Cruz. He's calling to share his story. And, man, when you hear it, man, it's unbelievable, man. You'll really appreciate it. And our stories have so many similarities to it. It's so intriguing. Great call right here from Surf City Raider.
Hello, Q. This is first-time caller, long-time listener. That would be Surf City Raider from the real Surf City up here in Santa Cruz, California, not the Southern California wannabe. Just like there's only one nation, the Raider Nation, there's only one Surf City. And I'm just calling, I'm a big procrastinator. I've intended to call many times, but, never really got around to it. But you're sharing your situation about your son's death and then also keeping things in perspective. I had to call finally. So I just want to echo your point that you got to keep football in perspective, and not have it lead to a lot of distress in your life. And, here I have a little kind of story to share too, mostly just for you, because I think you'll find it an element of it pretty interesting. My friends are all 49er fans, and, they're always, your Raiders this, your Raiders that. And, one Sunday morning some years ago, I was getting ready to go watch a game with them, and I was running a little bit late, kind of ready to go, when I got a call from my mom. And, she's kind of, I have a little impatience, listening to her on the phone sometimes because, she rambled a little bit, kind of like I do. Hard to understand what she was saying. But she was, catching some, complaining about not feeling really well and, et cetera. And, I said, she sounded like, she was pretty serious about that, but I just was impatient, as I said. I told her, I'll call you when I get home from the game, and took off. When I got home, I got a phone call I called my relatives. I tried calling her, and a relative answered, said, she's in the hospital. And shortly after that, I got a call from my brother and tells me, she's gone. And when I found out what he meant by that, I started hung up. I just fell to my knees, and I've never gotten over that situation, even till this day. I still miss her a lot. I haven't. I went to a funeral just for somebody else's funeral a couple of years back, and I almost seriously lost it. I thought, they're going to, everybody would be turning their head to look at me. But the thing I want to let you know, my mom passed away while I was watching football as she was being transported in a helicopter to Spokane, Washington, some ways away from where she lives, and she died on the helicopter. And what the date was, September 19th, 1999. So I know that that's a special day for you too. And I do want to add that I really appreciate the personal, references to your experiences that you add in there. I'll never forget during the George Floyd, troubles in the streets and all of the passions around that. You share some really personal experiences with racism as a kid, like walking in a neighborhood and somebody challenging you on that kind of thing. So I'll never forget that, what that must have been like. So anyway, you really value and treasure you as a Raider voice and as a person too. So I hope to meet you someday, maybe at the stadium over there. If I can scrape together an extra $500 or so. So anyway, take care. Thank you for all you do. Bye-bye.
Thank you, my man, for the call, and thanks for sharing your story. And obviously, I'm so sorry for your loss. I could totally feel and hear the emotion in your voice, and I understand where you're coming from. But, man, our similarities, talking about a football game, being in Santa Cruz, I've said it before on the show, but Santa Cruz was one of my son's favorite cities. We used to go to the beach boardwalk all the time. He loved that place. Of course, as you mentioned, September 19th, 1999, that was Kimani's birthday. And it's crazy. He was actually born a little bit after the Raiders-Minnesota Vikings game on that day. I watched the whole game in the waiting room at the hospital. So he was born after that. And since you said you were watching a football game that day, I'm sure it was the Raiders-Vikings game that you watched. I mean, it's crazy how many similarities. It was an early kickoff because the game was in Minnesota. So, of course, on the West Coast, it was an early kickoff. I was in Tracy. You were probably in Santa Cruz or wherever you were at. But, I mean, it's wild, right? There's so many different connections there. So thanks so much for sharing your story. Thanks for being a first-time caller as well. And that and other personal stories really, touched you. Again, that's why I tell those stories, because I figured that they'll do some good for someone. So I'm glad to hear that you were able to appreciate those. And again, thank you so much for sharing your story, man. It really meant a lot. Next up, got a text from Raider AB. Said, "What's up, Q? It's Raider AB. Love your show. Listening at 3 a.m. every morning on my way to work. It's the best. Just wanted to ask you your thoughts on a possible trade for Jalen Ramsey. It is known the Rams might explore a trade of Ramsey this offseason. What do you think it'd take to land him? Go Raiders. Thanks, Q." That's Raider AB. And yeah, a lot of people hit me up about Jalen Ramsey, and I know he's not the Jalen Ramsey that won the Super Bowl with the Rams. He's not the shutdown guy that they picked up from the Jaguars, but he's still really good. I don't have any idea, honestly, what the Rams will be looking for. I wouldn't want to give up a first-round pick for him. I really wouldn't. And the other thing is, you can't trade for everybody, right? You can't just keep trading all your draft capital, man. I mean, you've got to be able to build through the draft as well. But I would love to see a guy like Jalen Ramsey on one side and maybe a Nate Hobbs on the other. I say this, and I say it with all the respect in the world of Nate Hobbs. I don't want him to be the number one corner on the team because he hasn't shown that he can do it consistently yet. So I think he has the goods, but he's got to show the goods consistently. So I'd rather him not be the number one, more like the number two. Be the Rodman and let someone else be the Batman. Jalen Ramsey could definitely be a Batman. That would be intriguing to me. And that defense, we know, needs a lot of work. But like I said, I mean, in segment number 2, I talked about a potential trade for Aaron Rodgers. That's giving up capital. Now you're making a potential trade for Jalen Ramsey. That's giving up capital. You can't trade everyone. Now, if you trade Derek Carr and you get something in return, maybe that helps you in navigating through the waters and get some guys. But again, man, until this quarterback situation really gets figured out and what they're going to do with Carr and who the next quarterback's going to be, it's hard to say what kind of trades. But, man, a guy like Jalen Ramsey would definitely be an ideal dude to have on the outside, and hopefully the Raiders are able to, go and land a guy like that, whether they find a stud in the draft or they go and get a guy who they feel very confident about in free agency or, like I said, a trade if a trade is possible for him. But thank you again for that text. I appreciate you. Just got time for a couple more. Proto in Vancouver, British Columbia. He's calling to talk about Josh Jacobs and his tweets he sent out on Tuesday that I talked about in segment number 1. Here he is, Proto.
Hey, yo, Q, this is your boy Proto. I'm calling back. So last time I called, I didn't tell you where I was from. I'm actually calling from Vancouver, British Columbia. But I grew up in San Leandro. Yes, I am a San Leandro pirate. That's right. So I just wanted to talk about Josh Jacobs. I know there was reports today coming out about his tweet saying that he wants to do what's best for him. I think to me that means the man wants to get paid. And I gotta say this, I'm sorry, Raider Nation. I do not think it would be wise to pay Josh Jacobs. I just don't. We have way too many holes in that team, especially on defense. If you pay Josh Jacobs even $12 million a year, it'll just take away from building the defense. Now, if you keep Josh Jacobs but trade Darren Waller, that would make sense. I would be okay with that. But I gotta say, I love Josh Jacobs. He broke all kinds of records. He's amazing, but it just wouldn't be wise to pay him. That's what I think. Feel free to disagree, but that's what I personally think. We should fix our defense, and that's where most of the money should go to this year. Thanks for listening. Have a good day.
Thank you for the call, my man. And yeah, he was saying that it has to make sense for him about his contract. That's no doubt. Like I was talking about in segment number 1. The Raiders have ways of keeping him in the mix. They have the franchise tag. They can apply that. They have the exclusive franchise tag. I don't think they'd put that on him, but I mean, the franchise tag is only $10 million. They could put that on him and have him play that. I don't think he'd sit out. I really don't. You just don't see like Josh Jacobs is that type of guy. But there's a lot of things that they can do. And the fact that he put that tweet out on Tuesday, to me, makes it feel like he probably, they're already kind of talking to him about what they'd like to get done. So I'm sure they're trying to work with him as we speak. We'll see. I'm not 100% sure, but that's what I think. So thank you, Proto, for the call. I do appreciate you. And let's close out with a text from Cucamonga Raider. Don't want to go too long. I know lately we've been going super long, and I don't want to do that. And my man Ari, at Ari Produces on Twitter, is always like, you, watch your time. So not only do I got the man, the myth, the legend when it comes to Locked On checking out my time, but Ari, he's on it too. So let's go ahead and get this text, and we'll close things out. This one's coming from Cucamonga Raider. It says, Q, just catching up from your last 2 podcasts. Number 1, beautiful podcast this Friday, and thank you for sharing your message to the experience of your son. Sending my thoughts to you and your family. Losing a loved one is never easy, regardless of how long ago it was. 2, you were on point with your take on this weekend's games. Now that we have moved on from Carr and we can close the chapter on the yearly debate amongst fans, I want a damn good defense for once. When you think Raiders, you think toughness, you think intimidation. We haven't had any of that for God knows how long in the defense. Gruden went with the approach to fight fire with fire in our division. I want to see us instead inflict pain on other offenses this year, especially in our division. Don't get me wrong, I love touchdowns, but there isn't anything more satisfying than seeing a high-powered offense get shut down and seeing the frustrations play out on the field. Now, let's go build an intimidating defense this offseason. That's Cucamonga Raider. Thank you for that text. I do appreciate you. And, yeah, that was actually a subject that I had on Raider Nation Radio 920 Unnecessary Roughness on Tuesday. I was playing this or that. Do you want a badass quarterback, or do you want a badass defense? And I think I remember Cucamonga Raider sending in that exact text. Give me that badass defense. And I'll tell you, I'll take that defense as well. An awesome quarterback would be great. But man, awesome defense, I feel like does even better and travels really far and can get you deep into January like the 49ers are. That defense that they have has allowed a 7th-round pick in Brock Purdy to look like a really good quarterback. I mean, right? I mean, and I'm not saying he's not a good quarterback, but still, reality is he's a 7th-round pick, the last pick in the NFL draft, and he's just cooking with grease because he has the defense and the run game to back him up. So, man, I'm with you on the defense, and that's what I've been talking about quite a bit here on the show. So that's all I got time for on today's show. Still got a call from Raider Matt in Orange County. Got a text from Jack Raider in Connecticut. We'll get all those on tomorrow's show, plus more. We'll have more news and notes. Who knows what kind of rumors and reports will be swirling, today about the Raiders. I feel like it's going to be hot and heavy quite a bit. I'll be talking to Aaron Wilson from the Houston Chronicle on my radio show this afternoon about possibility of Derek Carr to the Texans and see what he says about that. If he has some good stuff, I'll bring it to the podcast as well. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Thanks so much, as always, for making the show your first listen each and every day. Remember, you can find the show free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Thanks to my man, Ari, at Ari Produces. But now, let me close out the right way. Thanks so much for making the show your first listen. We already did that. Yada, yada, yada. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Love on your family. Most importantly, as always, Raider Nation, just win, baby.